Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Allison Dawson and I am the Student Development Specialist and English Writing Tutor for ECTC Student Support Services Program, and I hope that each of you are having a wonderful day. Today I will be giving a brief virtual presentation titled Using Sources in Your Writing, MLA Documentation and Formatting, and this is the second video in the Using Sources in Your Writing series. And this presentation will cover some specifics of formatting and MLA style, as well as information on creating and developing in-text and bibliographic citations. And with that being said, my hope for today's presentation is that you will walk away with a better grasp on how to format and document your sources in MLA style. And moving along from that, further applying that these items that we're going to cover today in your writing assignments. And so let's begin by talking a little bit about the style itself. And so MLA stands for Modern Language Association. And specifically, this style is used most commonly in your history, cultural studies courses, your language arts, English 101 and 102 courses, as well as any other humanities courses that you may have. And with MLA, all sources are documented in two ways to avoid plagiarism. First, that is by in-text citations, which fall within the body of your paper, and then further by bibliographic citations, which appear on your works cited source list at the very end of your paper. So since we've covered that bit of background information, let's go ahead and move forward to a bit about formatting. Just a few items to take note of here. Set your margin to 1 inch on all sides as you're developing your paper. You're going to type your paper in Times New Roman, size 12 font, and double space throughout the entirety of your paper. Your last name and page number will appear in the upper right-hand corner of each page. And please pay attention to any further formatting requirements given to you by your instructor so that you may do your due diligence and complete your assignment to the best of your ability. Moving forward from that, let's take a look at some in-text citations or parenthetical citations. So each time you use information from a source in your writing, you will need a parenthetical or in-text citation at the end of your sentence or information right before the punctuation. An MLA in-text citation will almost always include the author's last name and the page number from the source you're referring to. Note my example below. You'll see that sentence information and then those parentheses, Dawson and page number for that author's last name and page number. Notice there's no commas separating those items. The only time you'll see commas with MLA in-text citations is when you have 3 authors, but we'll go over that in a bit. For now, we'll continue on into the importance of introducing your source. And so it's important to introduce your source as you're writing because it allows your audience to have clarity in where this information is coming from, and it also provides some organization in your ideas. You're going to introduce a source by presenting an author's last name, the author's last name of which that source is coming from, and the title of the source or publication if that's applicable. You're going to refer to the author only by last name. You're not on a first name, last name basis with that author. And then after you initially refer to that author by their last name, it's acceptable to use third-person pronouns, but do so in a way that provides clarity to your reader. You're going to use present tense as you're introducing with attribution verbs. Attribution verbs give the writer action in the writing. That writer may state, claim, explain, assert that information. You're not going to say that the writer says, because attributions refer to the writing. If you use the author's name to introduce the source, you will only need the page number in your in-text citation, as that is all that will be required at that time. And then after introducing that source once, it's acceptable to more concisely reference that source again, and we'll take a look at what that looks like in these examples. A couple of things to note first, though. Introduction information in these examples will be in white lettering, and attribution verbs will be in red. Number 1 on the examples reads, in quick access reference for writers, Troika and Hess state that all writers adapt their writing processes to suit their personalities, page 35. Moving right along to number 2 here, Troika and Hess explain that goals for writing are diverse, and every goal comes with different challenges for the author, page 40. Note that number 2 is paraphrased, right, whereas number 1 was quoted. And that original sentence from number 2, that paraphrased portion, is that purposes for writing vary and each makes its own demands on the writer. So that way you kind of have a before and after of what that looks like. Also note the way that I introduced both of these sources. You'll notice that in number 1, I had that title. I had the author's last names. It was more in-depth. Number 2 was very brief and concise, just the author's last names there. So please take note of that difference. So what happens if you do have multiple authors? Well, that's no problem. If there are 1 to 3 authors who wrote or contributed to the source you're referencing, insert all of the authors' last names and how they appear on the source. Now, if there are more than 3 authors who wrote or contributed to the source, you'll follow the last name of the first author listed on that source with et al. And so we'll take a look at what those look like in these examples listed. Number 1 reads, a documentation style is a standard format that writers follow to tell readers what sources they used and how to find them. Troika and Hess, page 228. Now notice this example is specific to 2 authors, and notice the use of and to connect their names there in that in-text citation. That use of and is specific to MLA. Number 2 reads, according to blank, your information from your source would go here. Author 1, 2, and 3, page number. This is specific to 3 authors only, and the commas are only used to separate the last names of the authors. Notice that after and 3 and that page number, there's no comma there. Moving on to number 3, however, compared to the study from blank, it was found that your evidence would go here. Last name, et al., page number. So this one was, again, more than 3 authors. A few other last minute items I want to mention here. If there is no page number to be found on the source that you're referencing, it is acceptable to use the paragraph number, and we're going to jump over to example number 1 just to get a quick look at a scenario for this. So number 1 reads, Dawson claims that attention to learning styles is an essential element to success in the classroom. Paragraph number. Now, paragraph is abbreviated to P-A-R-A, period, in this case. And you'll also notice that the author's name was used to introduce the source, so it did not appear in that in-text citation. Now, moving back to the additional rules, the second bullet there. If there is no author to be found on the source that you're referencing, it is acceptable to use the title. Now, if the title's long or more than 3 words, it is acceptable to use a shortened version of that title in your in-text citation. So we'll look at examples 2 and 3 next for a couple of different scenarios here. Number 2 reads, quotations are used to surround information that you didn't write. Shortened title and page number. So notice that I've got the title and page number there because that title was not used to introduce that source. It appeared in that in-text citation. Now take note of number 3. There is a difference. In the made-up article shortened title, it is stated that quotations are used to surround information that you didn't write. Page number. Now notice that difference, where the title is used to introduce in this case. It did not appear in that in-text citation. So please take note of that. Moving forward, we're going to begin looking at bibliographic citations. MLA's most recent update, the 8th edition, happened, I think it was in 2016, and I think it most widely affected the elements needed to compose a bibliographic citation. You should be used to the way MLA 8th edition functions by now because that update has been a few years ago. But please take note of the updates to documentation styles as they will continue to update, and ask your instructor about their preferences on that and things of that nature if you're not aware of the different things needed to compose a bibliographic citation. Also, ECTC's library research guides under the citations tab and MLA 8 provides a great video on the different elements needed to develop a bibliographic citation. But we're going to take a look at some of those in our next slide. So what are the elements that comprise an MLA bibliographic citation? So you're going to notice that this left column here, number 1, the author, last, first, and middle initial is how it will appear in your bibliographic citation. You'll need the title of that source. It may appear in quotations or italics in your bibliographic citation, depending on what you're citing. Title of container. So when you think about container, think about the website, that publication name. Where did that source come from? Number 4, other contributors. That might be an illustrator, anybody who's not the author but contributed to that source. Version, number, publisher, publication date, which is most commonly the year, and the location or page number of where you found the information that you're referencing. Couple of tips on this. When doing research of your own, you may not be able to find each element in every source, and that is okay. Different sources will contain different elements. Search for the elements that you can find and plug them in depending on what you need for the bibliographic citation you are trying to develop. And your goal overall is to provide your reader with the most complete bibliographic citation. Take note of my example below. I have a book listed by Bert Hilberg titled The Patchwork Planner, 350 Original Designs for Traditional Patchwork. Notice that I only have some of the elements there. Those were the only elements that I was able to locate. So you'll see kind of what I was able to plug in there. Now on our next slide, we're going to take a look at some how-tos. Now we've got book, scholarly journal article from an online or library database, website, magazine article online, videos online, and a digital image. Now, I'm not going to read all of these out to you individually, so please pause if you would like to take note of these or write these down, but I do have a couple of things I want to note quickly. On EBSCOhost, under the scholarly journal article, EBSCOhost has done this for you in some cases, so they might have a bibliographic citation put together for that source. So please take note of that and double check that based on the information that you need. URLs. If you need a URL to plug into your bibliographic citation, you're going to remove that HTTP or HTTPS off the beginning of that URL. And if you are looking under that website there, note that MLA no longer requires the date that you access that source, but it is recommended. So if that is something that you need to develop that bibliographic citation, please take note of that. And the last bit here that we're going to cover is your works cited page. So please remember, all in-text citations must have a corresponding bibliographic citation, and roles reversed, each works cited entry must have an in-text citation. You cannot have one without the other. A few other items here: Times New Roman 12-point font, double spaced. All citations must be in ABC order. Notice Dawson before troika here. The second line in each citation should have a hanging indentation, which is 5 spaces from the left margin. And pay attention to further requirements or preferences from your instructor on this. As we conclude today's presentation, if you need any additional help with MLA formatting or documentation, these are some great resources to check out. ECTC's library research guides under the citations tab, great videos, websites, and examples there. Purdue OWL and EasyBib both have guides on MLA. Purdue OWL has a more comprehensive guide, whereas EasyBib kind of just focuses on those citations, bibliographic citations, and the elements of that. So kind of be aware of those differences. If you're going to use citation generators, please be aware to use these with caution. They're a great tool, but they are not always accurate. So double check your citations and know what to look for. That's why I mentioned those elements earlier. Couple of great resources here. EasyBib and Citation Machine are some common citation generators. Again, double check your work. Using Microsoft Word to compose your citations is also an option. However, be aware of what version of Microsoft Word you have, because it may not be updated to MLA 8. And as always, if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me. My email, my phone, and my availability are listed on this slide. I thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you have a blessed day.